Before I begin, I'd like to say that this is going to be a little bit more interactive than some of the other talks you've seen before. So I'm just going to ask some questions, and I'd like you to raise your hands and ooh excitedly when I say something cool. So for example, how many people know how to raise their hands? Ooh, good, see? Okay, now I'll begin. Atlantis. Most of you know the story. Giant city beneath the sea, sunken people, mermaids, the lot. Gold City. Now, and that's partially true. Very partially true. But there's actually a very real, very human-based society. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, the origins of the myth begin like so. How many people know the works of Plato? Thank you. So, what he referenced many times to a golden city that was sunk beneath the earth by some natural disaster. They never specify what or when, and most scholars believe that this is actually referring to a Trojan War of some kind. But what most Atlantean theorists, like myself, believe is that he's actually talking about the Atlantis from the myth. Now, what we first need to do is separate myths from fact. In this instance, I need to first label when and where Atlantis first took place. And now, talking about when, I would say roughly about 10,000 BC. Why 10,000 BC? Firstly, because it's an old enough in society that a relatively advanced society could come forth from the beginning of time. And it's still old enough that any written records or ruins of its existence would have long since disappeared. As for where, I can't tell you until the very end, just to keep you all interested. Now, as for, most people confuse Atlantis with merpeople. It's not. These are not some god alien monster creatures who have come down to give man his magic fire. This is a very real, very human-based society, with the technology roughly equal to that of the Roman Empire at its height. So, now that we consider that, what survives? When all ruins, when all paper, when all traces of the society have long since disappeared, what exists? The answer? Culture. The Atlantean people were probably explorers, setting out from their original society and giving colonies and talking to other nations. And they spread their ideologies along with them. Now, in every single society that has ever existed, dragons have been there. They come in different formats, they come in different shapes, but for the most part they tend to have this trend. They're scaly, they fly, and they breathe fire. Now, this is a picture of an Inuit dragon. Now, who here knows what an Inuit is? Okay. For those of you who don't know, it's just when you think of an Inuit person, you usually think of an Eskimo, or someone who's a Native American that lives in a very cold environment. Now, what's very interesting about the Inuit dragon is that there are no lizards and very, very few insects up in that high cold. And yet the same scaly dragon-flying creature was found across their works. This is a Mayan ruin found in South America and drawn roughly about 4000 BC. Now, can somebody tell me what that looks like? Just give your honest opinion.
An elephant.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. There's the trunk, there's the eye, and there's the giant ear. And that would be fairly accurate. But the thing is, elephants, they live here. Mayans live here. So the question is, how did they get from Africa to South America? And the answer, quite simply, is Atlanteans. They could have brought one along for trade, or they could have brought one along just to tell the story of what an elephant was. And that's how the Mayans got this idea of ruins. Now, I've told you interesting tidbits. I've told you about the dragons and elephants, but I haven't actually told you my Atlantean theory. Now, I said at the beginning that I would wait till the end to tell you exactly what and where Atlantis is, and that's what I'm about to do. I believe Atlantis was located somewhere in inland Africa. Now, quick question. Does anybody know what this area is referred to when talking about ancient society? It's usually referred to as the cradle of humanity. Now, what the cradle of humanity really means is that in an evolutionary point of view, that is where society first evolved. And my theory of Atlantis is that it grew from that point, that an entire society existed and lived right there. It grew, became an empire, and then it started spreading. It went up through Northern Europe and into across Asia, and then using seafaring technology, it spread to the Americas. So what is my Atlantis theory? We are Atlanteans. We are the descendants of what used to be the greatest society on Earth. Now, it was the first, and it was powerful, and it had colonies everywhere. But then, the story of Atlantis is at least partially true. It got destroyed. It could have been an earthquake, it could have been a plague, it could have been anything really. Maybe it just collapsed under its own weight. But it disappeared, and these colonies had to fend for itself. Some of it kept its technology, some of them left it. But all we know is that they're gone, and we're here. Thank you very much.